To those of you who are on the political right are normal political observers who understand how the current political discourse happens, you may have realized that what I have realized, and that is we have a problem. The current political conversation is dominated by people whose position in the discourse is propelled by their popularity and not the substance of their argument. Not only that, but this norm is so concretely situated into our current moment that these same people are being mistaken for thought leaders. Not only that, but this is having a negative impact on how average people across the country and across the West think about political arguments and think about political principles. And I think, at least in my case, for those of us who love America and those of us who wish to conserve the values of America, unless we deal with this, this has the potential to rend apart our entire movement. And for those of you who are not a part of my movement, but who are simply rational and thinking people who observe politics and wish to see a smarter kind of discussion, this has implications for you as well, because if we don't fix this problem, then you will not see a better conversation. You will see a conversation dominated by socially sanctioned idiocy. Before I continue to explain what I mean by this, and I continue to talk about and expose the cult of the influencer in our conversation, I must say this. Hello everyone, I am Christian Watson. I am your host, of course, of this Pensive Politics video brought to you by me. If you enjoy political and social commentary with a philosophical bent, then I must encourage you, please subscribe, share, like the video, comment, even if you disagree with me. The best thing about living in a society buttressed by Western values is that you have the right to disagree with me, and we can still be civil, and we can still come together to talk about ideas. So I would encourage you all to comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. It will really help this channel grow, and it will help me continue to shepherd this message, which I believe is so important to broader audiences. Now, on to the video. So I've noticed this. I've been doing videos for about 4 or 5 years now. And over the course of doing videos, I have seen a lot of people rise and fall. And I won't be talking about personalities too much in this video. I'll talk about them a little bit. I'm going to focus more so on the phenomenon of the influencer and how it's impacting how people see and think about politics and social issues in our modern day. But I've seen a lot of people rise and fall. I've seen people rise within a single week and then fall the week after. I've seen people rise in a single day and then a few months after just fall. I've seen a lot of people rise and then get captured by forces that take them away from the values they professed in the first place and put them in the presence of people that don't really care about them as people, but instead care about them as a social token to further their own political agenda. I have seen it all. And in observing this, I have noticed that the conversation before 2016, before I would say the age of the influencer was foisted upon us, was decidedly different than the conversation after the age of the influencer. The conversation before the age of the influencer was more so contained and sterilized based on the talking points of mainstream media and the uncritical acceptance of certain sources of authority, which I believe, by the way, is not necessarily a good thing, but it had its both advantages and its disadvantages, obviously. But then the age of the influencer came around and the information stream became decentralized, which is fundamentally positive, by the way. I'm happy because we understand how many institutions lie to us and take advantage of our trust in order to push foul things. So that's a good thing. But that then brought rise to people who don't know anything. People who engage in what Kierkegaard, one of my favorite philosophers, called chatter, which then convinced people, due to their rise, that that was the way they had to think. I want you all to think about how political movements in the past have risen and have been successful. Normally, political movements in the past have had thought leaders. Now, I can identify for the past 60 or 70 years of American history some of the major thought leaders of what was considered conservatism in America, whether it be in the 1960s, whether it be William F. Buckley Jr., whether it be Thomas Sowell, who had and still has, by the way, an immense impact on thinking about race and thinking about economics, I think is immeasurable, whether it be Milton Friedman, whether it be Frederick Hayek, whether it be Brent Bozell Sr., someone who I don't agree with whatsoever on many things, but I think that he most definitely had an impact, whether it be Russell Kirk, all of these names, some of which you may know, you may not know, all had a sizable impact on the different strands of American conservatism. Now go over to the left. Starting from the 60s, the same starting point, we have Chomsky, we've got Allen Ginsberg, we've got so many different people who were indeed thought leaders, who were able to, or of course, Gore Vidal, who were able to intellectualize their case in their respective faction of the left. And thought leaders give movements a charismatic face, number one, to spearhead them, but they also give movements a individual or a few individuals that can help refine the thoughts of those who are downstream the thought leader, the grassroots person, the activist. And so thought leaders are evidently important for political movements if they're going to be grounded in something beyond mere passion, if reason is going to be exercised, even if that movement exercises reason in the wrong way, like the left most certainly does. But what also gave validity to thought leaders is how popular and how accepted they were by certain institutions. In the 60s, if you were wanting to be a conservative thought leader, you had to go to National Review. Today, National Review is an embarrassing shell of its former self, and some of you will be mad about that, but it's the truth. It is not conservative whatsoever. And if you want to be a conservative thought leader now, you just go and start your own X page or your own Twitter page. So the gate has been torn down. Similarly, if you wanted to be a leftist thought leader back then, you would have to write for a paper like The Nation or Mother Jones or whatever. Well, not anymore. You can now start your own channels and do your own thing. And that's part of the problem. And that has produced the cult of the influencer. Because popularity has shifted over the years from being gatekept, which was bad, by the way, but then to being decentralized, but gatekept by certain forces anyway, who managed to rise the ranks before anyone else and impose a monopoly upon that form of conversation. Hence the problem we have. The first issue that I want to bring to you guys' attention. The cult of the influencer has conflated being a thought leader with being an influencer. The more people you have on your X page or your YouTube page or your Facebook page who like and share your stuff, somehow in this new age gives your voice more validity than someone who has 50 followers or 60 followers. And this has convinced an entire generation of people, even older folks, that the more followers you have, the more correct or the more valid or the more sensible you must somehow be, when the exact opposite is true. If a look at history has shown us anything, it has shown us that the masses who exalt things and make them popular oftentimes exalt the wrong things, because the masses are generally motivated by passion and not motivated by a dispassionate assessment of what they are elevating, which is why, for example, you can have destructive things be elevated by popularity. Soda, for example. One of the most popular brands of soda is Coca-Cola. Soda is horrible for your teeth, horrible for your gut, horrible for your liver, horrible for your health, horrible for everything, and yet it is still very popular. The masses don't have a good track record, either politically, socially, economically, or whatever, in lifting up the right thing. So when you have popularity become the metric by which a thought leader is chosen, there is no more consideration given to thought, and that is being traded for popularity. And this means, this is my second complaint, that the cult of the influencer has convinced people that the norms of the digital age need to be prioritized over the norms of reason. Follower count, likes, and engagement are all seen as metrics of validity as opposed to substance. And when you compare this with how the internet has destroyed our brains, has decreased our attention spans, the journalist Nicholas Carr has a great book called The Shallows. I encourage all of you to read it. And he basically said that the decreasing of attention spans and the weakening of the brain makes us so distinct from previous generations, and we have a less good grasp on sensitive issues. And the core of the influencer takes advantage of this by making us look at the stimuli that produces reactions to us, like likes and shares and subscribers, as opposed to looking at what people are actually saying. And this, of course, leads to mediocre thinking and cults of personality. Now, I've explained this, but let me actually connect this to some tangible examples in the real world. Then I'll pivot and talk more about this in a moment. Now, there is this lady called Gaddis, one of the first examples I will mention, who essentially got her rise overnight by saying the N-word on TikTok in reference to deadbeat partners or spouses watch.
You're getting the opinion of some dumb whores and immigrants fresh off the boat looking for a green card. Yes, they are probably gold diggers, but that's the exception. I'm the rule. Everybody I know who's married right now, they're married to broke-ass niggas.
Now, Gaddis went from however many followers she had, a very small amount, to over 100,000 on X and even more on TikTok, and became the voice of the sort of tradwife conservative women movement in social media. I'm not joking with you. Not only that, but she went to AFPAC Nick Fuentes' conference, and I won't talk about him too much. I think that's not important to focus on him. But he kind of reflects this cult of the influencer I'm talking about. But it's not important to focus on him. And she somehow went there, went to tpusa, and she began just spewing out takes, calling people insults, and saying things that require no knowledge, require no reason, require nothing but mere sensibility to say. And within that span of a week, she went from loving AFPAC to hating AFPAC, loving Nick Fuentes to hating Nick Fuentes, and wanting to start her own political movement. And she was validated simply because she went viral. Another example would be Kyle Rittenhouse. Now, I, like many people, was ecstatic when Kyle Rittenhouse was found not guilty for rightly shooting the people that tried to take his life and, most importantly, tried to destroy the community around him. But when Kyle Rittenhouse was announced to go on a speaking tour a few years after being found not guilty to speak about his experiences and to be this pro-America voice, my immediate reaction was, I'm not trying to attack him for his age because I'm just 24 myself. So I'm not too far off from him. But I'm just trying to say, what expertise or experience or a track record does Rittenhouse have that would enable him to be able to competently argue deep issues of politics and society? Absolutely none. And it was exemplified, this truth, in an exchange he had with a Black Lives Matter protester at his event who questioned him about Charlie Kirk and Charlie Kirk's supposed racism. Go.
The CEO of Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, has said a lot of racist things.
Like what racist thing has Charlie Kirk said? We're gonna have a little bit of a dialogue about what racist things has Charlie Kirk said.
Okay, I'll answer the question of racist things he said. He says we shouldn't celebrate Juneteenth. We shouldn't celebrate Martin Luther King Day. We should be working those days. It's called Ketanji Brown Jackson, an affirmative action hire. He's talked nonsense about George Floyd. And he said he'd be scared if a black pilot was on a plane. Does that not seem racist?
I don't know anything about that.
Okay, well, after all the things I just told you, would you consider that hate speech?
I'm not going to comment on that.
Now, I'm not saying Rittenhouse shouldn't be an influencer. All I'm saying is that if you're going to be something of a thought leader, you should probably have some grasp over the subject matter you're talking about. Rittenhouse has none. I can keep going on and on and on and on. But it's not about Rittenhouse, and it's not about Miss Gaddis. They are simply two downstream consequences of the cult of personality built around influencers. Because the only reason those two people have as many followers and credence as they have is because they've managed to tap in to the digitized, zombified minds of the masses who seek excitement over substance, and in doing so have lowered their criteria for what should be a good thought leader. It's a cult of personality. But the true significance is this, my friends. The real issue here is not about those two. It is instead about what this does to our ability to consider issues. Most of the time, when I'm hearing other people talk in the influencer space, I'm hearing them cite other people. Well, so-and-so said this, or Ben Shapiro said this, or Candace Owens said this, or this pollster said, or Nate Silver said this. And when people say that, I oftentimes want to look at them and say, why should I care? And I have done that before. And the biggest reason I get whenever I ask that is because, the people say this, they have clout, they've got clicks, they've got attention. And I think to myself, will clout, clicks, and attention preserve civilization? The enemies that the pro-American movement is up against are so severe, they are so intelligent, and they are strategic. They've captured most of our institutions. They have captured the way we speak. They have captured and reframed the way so many people think about politics and about our country. They've been doing this since the 1900s. They've been doing this since the era of Woodrow Wilson and his friends. They've been doing this since the importation of Prussianism into our country. And yet you believe that simply being popular within their system, but mind you, within their system, is somehow a winning recipe. No, it's a recipe for defeat. And the problem is this. When people do this kind of thing, issues become defined not by their own merits or their own flaws, but by who advocates for them and who talks about them. And this is the big issue here, my friends. Because when you have a personality in front of an issue, the issue itself cannot be truly explored. You can only explore a facsimile, a shadow of the issue, because the personality is blocking out your ability to see beyond that person. So there may be a moral position to be had on a particular issue, but if a personality you don't like advocates for it, in this cult of personality, you have therefore diminished your ability to engage with that issue, and you may be missing out on advocating for something that's actually fundamentally good, all because someone you don't like is advocating for it. And for this reason, so many good voices go unheard. Now, some people may say, well, Christian Watson, this is just sour grapes on your part. No, it's not. No, it's not. I have been in the presence of people that get many more views than me, and I don't really care about that. What I care about is the future of our country. And what I care about is ensuring that people are thinking well. But with this cult of personality, that's not the emphasis. The emphasis quickly devolves into factionalism. This is why influencer drama happens. This is why so many different influencers have different tiffs and feuds, and people will pick a side. For example, during the Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens feud, the subject matter of that entire thing was the Israeli-Palestine war, the appropriate level of involvement that America should be in, if anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, and so many other different questions that, regardless of how you feel about these questions, those issues should have been at the forefront. But instead, Candace Owens was focused on solely, and now she has become some kind of pariah for a group of people as to how conservatives apparently can't talk about issues. If you want to talk about an issue, talk about the fucking issue. Excuse my language, but it's pathetic at this point. It's pathetic how weak and limp-brained so many people have become. If you want to discuss an issue, discuss the issue. But the cult of personality is holding our conversation back. There is no reason why we cannot have an interfactional discourse in the conservative movement. The only reason would be because we are too caught up in things that don't actually matter. The call of the influencer would be the death knell of the pro-America movement because it introduces unhealthy ideas and appetites and allows them to stay. In a completely sane world, someone who utters a racial epithet or someone who pushes eugenics, they would not be popular. Their ideas would be engaged with, their ideas would be critiqued, and then they would be set aside by thinking people. But in this new world, vice is rewarded rather than virtue. In this new world, you can do so many different things that show a lack of good character, not just honest mistakes, but absolutely terrible things, whether it be SAing, you guys know what that is, people at political conferences and then getting away with it, well, regardless of what it is. And so long as people like what you have to offer, like a bad salesman, they will keep supporting you. The cult of the influence does not only affect our ability to think about these issues critically, it affects our moral sense and our ability to actively engage with what is right and what is wrong. So for all of these reasons, my friends, I think that the solution is very simple. We have to stop looking at popularity, and we have to stop looking at personality, and we have to stop conflating thought leaders with influencers. Because popularity is oftentimes not the best way to understand much of anything, much less who offers the most value. We should instead begin moving towards an emphasis on who makes the best arguments, moving towards an emphasis on who has the best values, and moving towards an emphasis on who is willing to engage with as many people as possible, regardless of any status, regardless of any clout, and work with them to make sure our nation moves forward. And that change ultimately begins with you and I. That change ultimately begins with how we changing how we consume media, how we treat people, how we deify people. That change ultimately begins with a revolution of the mind, which is my bigger project here. But this is a smaller part of that overall revolution, one that can be done simply by assigning value to things that matter and rejecting the assignment of value to things that don't matter. But the true question is, will people do this? It's my hope that videos like these will help move that needle forward. But in the case that it does not happen through any source, we're going to continue to see a lot of people led astray from good positions to bad positions. We're going to continue to see a lot of people caught up and facsimiles and shadows of ideas rather than the actual idea themselves. And we're going to unfortunately see a lot of good people think in bad ways, all because they couldn't break out of a cult of personality. So for that reason, my friends, we ought to move beyond the cult of the influencer, and we ought to cultivate a culture of thinking that places influence only in those things which are proven by time and proven by reason to be beneficial for our souls, and rejects all of the trash that is not. My friends, if you like this video, like, comment, share, subscribe, do whatever you can to get this message out there. I love you guys so much, and please stay pensive. Bye, guys.